Romance at a glance. Romance at a glance.
What you say now?
Romance at a glance.
Go ahead, girl.
Well, hello, dear listeners, and welcome to another episode of Romance at a Glance. I'm your host, Bridget. With me, as always, is my co-host, Shawnee. Hello, Shawnee.
Hey, Bridget.
How you doing, girl?
Girl, I'm good. I'm here with you. I'm good, girl.
Yes, you're in the new office, kicking it.
Feels
Guys,
so good.
we are in a COVID pod together. We're the only people in the pod. My kids, obviously, and husband and her partners, but we don't have any other. There's no one else. It's just us. We're the only people we've extended the circle to, and it's glorious.
I like having a pod.
I do too. As you guys may remember, I read Your Dad Will Do by Katee Robert and immediately knew that we had to get her on this smutty season for Shawnee. Her books are so dirty and so wonderful, and I knew that they would get you real excited, Shawnee.
Oh, Bridget, you treat me so good.
I know I do. And even more exciting, she agreed to come on the show and hang out with us, talking romance, sex, and books, her favorite characters, the types of stories she likes to write, and how she is able to write so much every single day and month. And lots more. She was great.
Also, Bridge, she is giving away a copy of Desperate Measures, the first book in the Wicked Villain series, just to our listeners.
Woohoo!
So head over to Romance at a Glance on Instagram for your chance to win.
Guys, these books are so sexy.
Smoking hot.
Smoking hot.
Smoking hot.
Let's do it. Thank you, Katee.
Let's get into it.
So I'm super excited that you're here, Katee, because I read Your Dad Will Do and I died. I loved it so much. And we were telling our patrons and hey girls. And I was like, you guys have to buy this book immediately because it is so sexy. And then I was hoping that we could get gifting you to your best friend, gifting her to your best friend. Wait, I'm saying that wrong. Mixing the title.
Gifting me to his best friend.
Okay, there we go.
I should know my own titles.
I had the pronouns all mixed up. Okay, gifting me to his best friend. And I was like, Shawnee, it's a married couple, and he's going to gift her to the best friend on vacation, and there's going to be a menage, and they're all going to be together, and there's no audiobook. So then I was like, okay, we still have to do Katee Robert. I'm going to find a book. I'm going to make it fit Christmas. And then I saw the Wicked Villain series, and I was like, Beauty and the Beast has a snow scene. Mm-hmm. And that was my justification for it being in Christmas. The snow. It snows in the book. That's a holiday book. That was it.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, it seems legit to me.
Yeah.
Also, Bridget and I, we've actually had a poll about this on Instagram. In the actual story of Beauty and the Beast, we are both very disappointed when the Beast turns back human.
Yeah. I mean, was anybody not disappointed? Like, cause
it's not attractive. I'm
No.
like, what happened to the hotness of the Beast? He became this like strange looking man.
when the live action made it worse, cause like the wig and stuff, I'm like, no, stop it.
I also, in general, in the live action, think he was miscast. And I will stand by this because I think it's a bad idea to cast someone who isn't Broadway level talent when everyone else in the movie. Same with Emma. I like Emma. I think she's fine. She's a good actress. I like her in other stuff. But you can't cast people who can't sing at the Broadway level. Have everyone else be Broadway stars because then they just sound bad at singing. They're actually not bad at singing. It's just everyone else is the apex predator of singing.
Yeah, the live action was something else. I didn't hate it the way a lot of people hated it, but I didn't like love it the way I wanted to.
I agree. I loved the art and the costumes and this, like, it was beautiful, but I wanted to feel more feels. I wanted to be in the emotion a little more. So I was really impressed when reading your book because I think novellas can be a little tricky because they're short. But like you fit in so much story. I mean, it's raunchy as fuck, you guys. I've said it before on the podcast. I'll say it again. It's raunchy as fuck. I love it so much. You have to go buy it now. But you also fit in like such a good story and like so much emotion in that. How do you like craft those? Do they come to you fully formed? Did you have like a little idea and spawn it from there?
Well, the Taboo series specifically is like designed to be like just straight up escapism. Like, so the plot, there's not much plot, there's not much like intense character work. Like it's there's a lot of heart, but they're just sexy books. And that first one was created because of two reasons. One was the pandemic, and like when I get stressed out, I just like create because I'm in my house with people all the time now, and I have no recharge time, and so I just I work a lot. And the other was Nikki Sloan's Filthy Rich American series, where she single-handedly sold me on like father-in-law stuff, even though like it didn't end the way that I wanted it to end because I was so sold on father-in-law stuff. Great books, highly recommend. But I had this whole like grappling of like, am I into like the father-in-law type thing? Like I didn't think I was, but I think I am, and I just don't know. And then the pandemic hit, or like that was right when the pandemic was like getting really bad. And so it just like I spouted off a tweet on Twitter, like I can't write a book about like a woman who, her fiance cheats on her and she screws his dad. And Twitter's like, but you could.
But you
and
could.
So and so it just was like this crazy, like it was like 6 days. Like it was insanely fast, just out of me. And so those books have become kind of a escape. Like I call my dessert projects, that they're not like as intense or like, well, intense as my normal books, but they are just like the perfect little like bite size. Like you can read them in a couple hours. You don't have to worry about too much angst or anything like that. Like they just, they're going to give you an escape from the world, and they gave me an escape from the world while writing them. So that's sort of what spawned those. And so I went through and I have like 8 total that will be written that are basically just like sort of taboo-ish tropes that I'm like, I want to write that. I think that's hot. And then I just go in and like I'm writing the third one soon, and it's going to be my daddy's best friend. And so we're just rolling with it.
Okay, first of all, I'm so excited there's 8. And also, I want you to tell people about your writing, because I was like stalking you on Instagram, and I think it's fascinating how you like chart out all of your projects and track how much you're writing on each project. Like how did you always write like that, like very organized, or did you come up with a system?
I never used to be that organized, because I always had this idea that like I always reach a little further than I should when it comes to deadlines. And so this last year and a half, I have done a lot of like, I guess, character work on myself and like figuring out what works for me. And I took Becca Syme has this class that's like strengths for writers and write better faster. And it's like very much geared towards the Gallup Strengths Finder, like personality test or whatever. And so there's like 34 strengths, and everybody has a different combination. And so having discovered mine, I'm like, oh, I just write fast. And so I need to like calm down and like just go with it. And so by discovering that about myself and like realizing that, like giving myself permission to go fast, essentially, I am very visual. So I like my spreadsheets, and I like to like block out approximately like my minimum word count for each month. And so from there, I just project projects and leave some flexibility, because I'm mostly indie at this point. So I have flexibility. And so I have my foundational projects, which has been the Wicked Villain series, and starting next year will be the Sabine Valley series. And then interspersed with that will be dessert projects, which is like the Touch Taboo series. I'm going to write some monster romance because I'm into it. And
yes, we are
just sort of like whatever tickles my fancy. And that has been a really good balance to like allow me to have a really high output without burning out, because I'm not so locked in that I like feel trapped, even though it looks like it. It looks really crazy on the outside, but it works for me.
What's your, out of curiosity, what is your monthly word count that you try to hit?
My minimum, so I plan on a minimum of 40,000 words, but realistically I usually hit about 60, but I plan 40.
That's a whole book.
Yeah,
that's
pretty
a whole
much.
book's worth of writing.
Yeah, so I plan 40 just because stuff happens, and like, or if edits come in or like things, so that way I don't overcommit ahead of time, but I still end up overdoing what I plan.
That's a lot. That's a lot. I'm impressed. Yeah, snaps. Shawnee's clapping.
You just mentioned something though about monster romance. So
yes.
I want to ask you a quick question about this. We just read a book where it was a dragon romance. We love monster romance.
Dragon, actually, by G.A. Aiken.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. And so in the book, Bridget and I both came to this conclusion separately. We were like, did you expect that there was going to be dragon sex in this book? And we're both like, I wanted some dragon sex in this book.
Or at least some kinky, like maybe it's not like we don't want her to die in the process, but like maybe
like
some
he
sort
half
of
shifts.
he
Like
half shifts, or
type.
like he's chasing her as a dragon and then shifts to a man to catch her. Like we wanted some because she kept trailing her hand along his wing, like, and I was
that's
like
foreplay.
I know. I was like, bring us more of that. I was into it.
Yeah, that desire of like wanting like quote unquote real monster romance is like I keep asking for it, and I know it exists out there because it has to, but like no one is recommending me these monster romances that, just a little outside the realm of like, what we have already. And so I'm gonna do it. Just because
do you mean not cheesy?
No, well, hopefully not. Hopefully not. I'm aiming for them to be like basically like the Touch of Taboo books, but paranormal monster romance. So like really hot, not too much of anything else going on, but like, just some like monster boinking.
Yeah.
We support this.
Yeah, we decided next year we're gonna do a season of just like alien and cyborg romances.
Yes,
because we love them so much. Like
so much.
What's not to like? What's not to like about a 7-foot blue man who has like a telepathic connection with you
and
also
wants to have sex with you? Is specifically geared towards like just lady pleasure,
your orgasms. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. So when you're writing your series, do you like already plot them all out ahead of time, or you kind of know the characters, or go with the flow?
I don't plot just because it doesn't work for me, but it depends. Like for my baseline series, my Sabine Valley series that have coming up, I went through and I know all the characters, like the names, at least in their positions, because they all 7 books start on the same day. So I needed to know these things. And then I know like the main tropes, but that's it. And so then I just know that going in, and I'll like make notes as I like write through the series. With the like Taboo series and stuff, I just know the tropes and that's it. And half the time they don't get names until like halfway through the book, just because it's like just this rush of like creativity. So I don't do a ton of plotting. I usually know tropes specifically and some sort of character work ahead of time, but not much beyond that.
That's incredible. You write so many books. I'm just like, there's so many things coming out. Because I was looking at your list of books that came out in 2019 and 2020, and it was like 12 books or something like that.
Yeah, it's been really interesting because this year was only supposed to have like 5 releases, and it's had like 8 or 9 or something like that. And I'm gonna sneak in one more, I think, like if things go well. And it's just, I am very fortunate that my like stress response is to work more, and that I found that I can't really I try to take the afternoons off, like that's my balance. But if I take like a week off, I come out of that week planning 3 more series. So I can't do that. Otherwise I end up in trouble because it's like too many good ideas. So it's just been, I don't know. I don't know I don't know if I'll sustain this pace. I can't imagine I will, but it's worked out really well so far. So we'll see what happens.
Do you make because you're an indie author, but
Mm-hmm.
are you submitting any of your future stuff for traditional publishing? Is that something you're interested in?
Right now I do have one traditional series that it's contracted. The first book's done. It's coming out June of next year. It's like a Greek mythology retelling. And so the first book is Hades and Persephone, and the second book I'm writing right now is Eros and Psyche.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's been really fun because it's kind of in the same world as Wicked Villains and Sabine Valley. It's just they're a little bit more plotty, like they're more like single title than like just straight up sexy good times. So it's been really interesting working with a traditional publisher again, because I've been indie for a couple of years now, and the hardest thing I have adjusting is the timelines, because I'm so instant gratification right now. It's like, wait, what do you mean it's not coming out for 10 months? I don't understand. What do you mean the arcs aren't done? Like I'm done with this book. So I'm trying to like just have patience and like because that's how traditional works. But it's been really good. I am really excited to I've seen cover concepts for it, and they like are so fresh and so cool. And I'm really excited to be able to figure out which one's going to be mine, and just for everybody to read these books because they're delightful. I'm yeah, it's funny because it's series that, like, I could not have sold pretty much anywhere else, but I just happened to sort of pitch it to this editor at a convention with the intention of I was going to indie publish it no matter what. Like I was like, I'm going to write it anyways. Like, sure, we'll talk about it. And she's like, yes, no, I want this. I was like, oh, okay. so it's a good, hopefully will be a good balance going forward. I plan on staying primarily indie just because I can move as fast as I want and I can maneuver and change and like adapt easily. And the money's really good, like right now. So I pay my bills. It's really important to me. But I do want to keep a foot in traditional just because there are opportunities there that I can't necessarily get on my own.
What is like, I saw that some of your books are Kindle Unlimited or have been. You have like, I know you have the first book of the Wicked Villains. Well, at the time of recording, apologies, fair friends, it's probably not going to be free when we are publishing this, but currently it is for free. How do you balance like the promotions and all that stuff?
So I don't really normally mess with Kindle Unlimited just because most of my series are wide and have been. I did an experiment with it with old series from like 2012-ish that I got rights back on. And so I'm just seeing how it goes. I don't intend on being Kindle Unlimited just because I do pretty well wide and like I like having eggs in more than one basket. I don't trust Amazon over much. So that's an experiment with old books just because like a ton of people have already read it. Might as well introduce it to a new audience. The free book is, well, I mean, the series is complete, so I'm hoping it'll like draw in some new readers to like now that it's complete to potentially binge their way through. We'll see if it happens. I in hindsight, I don't know if I would have started the series with that book because it's so intense right off the bat. And it's like, it's pretty harrowing for a first book in a series if you're not prepared for that level of like, kink and stuff.
Raunch.
Yeah, for real. So hindsight, but so I'm just, I have some promotions lined up to kind of promote the first book while the sixth book is just coming out. And I'll probably put it free on and off like however often. Like I still have much impulse control, so it's a lot of like, this sounds good, I'll just try this now and see what happens. And yeah, because I'm not great at promotion. I don't really do advertising and stuff like the pay-per-click ads because I just have a hard time with them and it frustrates me, so I stopped doing it. So a lot of it's just me just geeking out about my books and hoping people to see me talk about it and get excited.
Well, you certainly have a lot of fans and stuff. Shawnee and I were talking earlier, like a lot of authors that we talk to don't like do merch. They don't do a lot of social media. Maybe they don't certainly do Patreon.
Yeah.
Like, and we're always like, hey, like people love your writing. If you can't finish a book more than one a year, you could probably like write short stories or sell special swag or whatever. Like how'd you start that?
The Patreon specifically started because my my mob series had a pretty decent following, and people were constantly like, "Oh, we'd love you to write like a story with this character or these couples, or like we'd like to see them again." And eventually, I was like, "I'm not going to do this for free. Like, I have to write stuff that'll pay my bills. But like, if you guys want to sign up, like, I can do a short every month, and with this Patreon stuff." Which has sort of evolved into I do signed paperbacks through it every other month, like my indie signed paperbacks. And I am doing a subscription box, which again, impulse control, we'll see how it goes. But the main $5 tier is they get my indie books early and they also get to nominate, vote, and then I write a short story every like month, which is like not a large story, but it's just more of like a check-in with like, oh, what are these couples from Beast up to? Like, tell us what they're doing now. And it's been pretty successful. It's kind of cool to see what characters get voted in because it's fun for me to revisit. And it is probably going to be the sole reason that I have an O'Malley's 2.0 series at some point in the future because they keep having babies. And so I'm like, oh, and now like we moved up in the timeline to the babies are teenagers. So it's like, well, shit, I guess we're going to do that at some point. Like, all right, the merch is just like, again, impulse control. It's like, oh, this seems like a cool thing. I think I'll be doing more with Saving Valley just because there are like 3 factions. So there's like that element of like sorting yourself that I enjoy. I don't know if anybody else will enjoy, but I enjoy it. So
Oh, everyone does. I mean,
Everyone
let's just go to like Harry Potter's the easiest example. Like people still to this day are like, "What house are you in?"
yeah,
I'm like, obviously Gryffindor. Hello, have you met me?
I wish she was less problematic because that world is pretty great.
I know that's the worst. I'm like, just stop. Just don't.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Just let us enjoy it the way we want to enjoy it. We just interviewed Nalini Singh, who is a goddamn delight.
Oh,
and I was reading one of her tweets and she said something like, books, once you write them, are for your readers. They're no longer for you. So however they interpret what you wrote, like if you didn't make it explicit on the page, they can read into it whatever the fuck they want. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, obviously. Her tweet was 140 characters, but I thought that's such a nice thing to remember, even for us as like, creators of a lot of different mediums. Like once you put it out there, it's not yours anymore. It's theirs now. And they can look into it as much as they want to.
Yeah, I mean, I've been around long enough that it's easier for me to be like, and release. Like it's only when people like barge into my timelines being like, hey, it's crappy that you did this thing. And I'm like, ooh, that is not for me anymore. It's for you. Like feel the way you're going to feel. I support you, but also the book's written, it's out of my hands.
Yeah, I used to rewrite. I mean, like, and this was like, again, in the beginning days of fan fiction. And probably even before that, because I mean, the internet was still sort of new this way, but like, I would read a book, like a very physical hard copy book, not like the way it went, and then rewrite that book. That's how I started before like getting on fanfiction.net before. I know that's like super dating, but like that's how I did it. I would rewrite everything. I'm like, I don't like what you did there. Let's just rewrite the whole ending to this or whatever, whatnot. And I think that's kind of cool because if they like your books enough, right, where they like the world you built, but they don't like the twist you took, well, that might spark somebody to start writing,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, in the fan fiction community is so like, there's so much cool stuff going on. I'm not actively participating. I just sort of am on the periphery occasionally, but like, it just mostly like anime related, but like, it's so cool. I'm like, you guys are so creative. And like, I am so impressed by you. And like, wow.
Because I know you can't see Katie right now, but I'm keep noticing the pictures behind her. And I feel like it very much sums up her writing. She has this like very romantic picture on one side with a couple maybe in like 1950s-ish looking clothes, sharing a very sweet kiss. And then on the other side, she has like this they're both in black and white, like a man, his hands on her neck, kissing her passionately. And like, you just see their faces from the side. And I'm like, this is summing up quite nicely what's going on in your brain. It's like right above your head too. So it's like, oh, I want it to be sweet and romantic, but also dark and nasty.
Sexy throat grabs, all the sexy throat grabs.
That's what I'm telling you, man. Throat grabs are hot as long as someone knows how to do it.
Yeah. I was cracking up because I just finished edits on Sabine Valley #1 like last week, and one of the editorial comments was maybe there should be more choking during sex in this book, and I'm like, you know what, you're right, I'm gonna put it in there.
Valid. Can you ever have enough choking?
Apparently not. So
do you feel like I wonder, like when you're writing, if you're writing thinking like, I wonder if my editor's gonna think I went too far this time?
That book specifically, because it has a lot of like like actual hate sex, and it gets pretty intense. And I was like, did I go too far? Like, please tell me. And she's like, no, it was great. I loved it. I'm like, cool, great. I'm glad we had this talk. But I have a couple friends that I text usually when I'm like theorizing on like, would this be too much? And at this point, it's just a joke because they always are like, no, go further. And so I just have learned to trust my instincts because my id list, for better or worse, matches up really well with like the readers that I've found over the last like year and a half, 2 years. And so usually if I'm into it, they'll be into it too. So it's worked out pretty well.
Well, it's funny. I actually just met, so I got stuck in Florida for like 7 months during COVID. And during that whole time I had a pen pal who I met her on my first like kink class that I did on Zoom. And we totally hit it off just because we were the only Black people there. And it's, and the kink community is not that many brown people. So when you see one, you're like, I see you. So she messaged me like separately, and we were pen pals all of quarantine. And I just met her like in real life recently. And of course we hit it off in real life. And at a certain point we started talking about books, and I was talking about the podcast, and I was like, oh, we're going to do a dark romance season. And all of a sudden she just came alive. Well, she was already alive, but you know what I mean? And she was like, oh, what are you reading? You know, and then she gave me a whole list of like dark romances that she loves, but you know, with the caveat, she's like, these are dark. These are really dark. I mean, and then she starts explaining what's in the stories, and I'm like, I'm with you. Like, let's go. You know, and I think people think that there's some line, you know, but if you people like what they like, and if you're writing that, they'll keep coming back for it. Especially, I think, in stuff that's more taboo and people don't want to talk about, because there were tons of books that I was reading that I would never have admitted to anyone I was ingesting. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, especially these days. My reading is much not, or at least during in like March and April was like really dark, like really, really dark romance, which is not usually my thing. I like a little bit dark, like sprinkle it in. But yeah, but I've like I said, like you said, I have your friends that you're like, hey, I'm in the mood for like some fucked up shit. Like, can you help me out? And they're like, yes, here's a list. And it's so nice because then you can text them and be like, why am I okay with this? But I really am. I'm super okay with this. I have no questions. And they're like, yes, that's me too. And it's just really affirming to like have your people.
Yeah. It's very, that's our favorite thing so far about the podcast is like, sometimes when your immediate close friends or family don't like the same stuff you do and think that you're kind of a weirdo, or constantly like, oh, are you reading another smut book? And you're like, well, yeah, I am. And it's awesome. And you should totally read it too, because they're amazing. Hello. But it's so fun, like meeting all these people now and meeting all these great authors and being like, you're just like us. Like you like all this weird shit and your brain's going off on all these weird tangents. And we're all living in happy land.
Happy. I mean, when Bridget and I met, I think I saw a book on her shelf or something. And I was like, you know, like, you read that book? She's like, I read that book, and I also read these books. And I was like, oh, you do? And that's literally...
That's how the podcast happened.
That's how the podcast happened.
I was like, you like freaky shit too? I was like, cool, I like freaky shit too.
And I think our podcast, if you like listen from the front to now, from the beginning to now, I mean, we've gotten so much freakier as it's gone on. I think in the beginning we were holding back a little bit more. At least I was, you know.
You definitely were. I was not. I was just like...
It was probably me. It was probably
I'm not the kid. Shadi was like, I would never tell anyone. I'm the person who would be like reading my book with the scandalous people on the front cover as I walk down the street. Just
I used to cover my books and write Pride and Prejudice on the cover, so nobody would know what was happening.
One thing I think is cool is like that the digital like Kindles or whatever sort of digital books people are reading has kind of allowed people access to a much wider type of book, because before, like Johnny had, you might have to cover your book up or hide it under your mattress or something. And now everyone's like, who knows what's on my Kindle? Who knows what's on there?
Am I blushing? Am I just a little overheated? It's fine.
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. When the Kindle it's also like the indie publishing scene has allowed for so many different niche stories to be told that makes me so happy, because it's like stuff I like wouldn't necessarily be published by traditional publishers, and now I have a whole list of things I can read because people published it themselves. And it's just a good, like, there are always drawbacks, but it's just I'm a happy reader these days.
Do you I assume you write full time and have been writing full time? Okay.
Yeah,
because I was going to say
2012, I want to say I've been doing it full time.
Nice.
Originally small press and traditional, and then in like 2018 the market fell out, and like I was like, I'm gonna have to get a job. Like I have no skill set. Oh God, because I didn't, you know, I just worked minimum wage and then like became a writer, and so then I went indie and kind of just unapologetically went hard on the stuff that I really enjoy, which has, you know, resonated with people who have found it. And so now I'm paying my bills, and so hopefully we'll continue to do so.
Heck yeah.
The turnout that you have, you're definitely gonna be able to do that. That is
Yeah, I will for sure be just buying all of your future books because I was like, I've read like 3 of them so far, and I'm like, Shani, you have to. Oh, speaking of which,
Real talk, Katie.
how do you choose your audiobooks? Tell us about them because I'm excited that you have like some of them and that more are coming out.
So my Taboo books will be narrated by Jenny Nordback of the Wicked Wallflower Club. Like she has like this great narration voice. COVID kind of mucked up our timeline a little bit, but they will come eventually. The other books, I go through production company and kind of give them a like when they cast like here's what I'm thinking, and then they send me a bunch of auditions, and I go through and listen to them all and pick from there. I've been really, really happy with the results. Like the guys that I was able to pick for the narration and the ladies too are just it's really different hearing my books read aloud by like sexy man voices and sexy lady voices because I'm like, oh God, like who wrote this? Like, oh dear. like turning the color of a tomato, like, oh my goodness. So it hits differently.
It does. I mean, I love like this, like the best sound to my ears is like a really deep, rich male voice. And so, when I get that, especially like when you hear the first line of an audiobook, and I'll be like, oh, this is, it's like half the fun already. And I just started the Beast, and I love the narrator for the Beast. It's a girl. But I already was like, as soon as she started, I was like, oh, she's great. I love this. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm really happy with them. I'm excited for the timeline for releasing the books closer to like release will move up now that I've caught up with my backlist. So Amazon just takes forever.
Yeah, well, and also recording an audiobook isn't like a half a day event. It's like it takes a long time to get it all together.
Yeah, I had planned on like trying to do like some of the producing myself, and I looked into it and I was like, no, I'm just gonna pay somebody to do this. Like you can figure it out. You send me the completed thing. This is perfect. I'm just gonna keep writing books.
That is half the battle as a creative who works for yourself and like publishes your own stuff is like, I'm the same way. I'll be like, I could do that. Let me look into it. And then I'm like, I'm gonna pay somebody. I'm not gonna spend the next 3 weeks learning how to figure all that out when someone else already knows how.
Yeah, I had to like sit down and be like, okay, let's talk real talk. Like how much time would I spend doing this? I could probably almost write a book in that time. Like, and then, actually make money on that instead of just, So time or money, you spend one or the other no matter what. So I decided in this case to delegate.
Yeah. That's awesome. Cause like I only listen to audiobooks. Like I don't read physical books anymore. Like I can't. Like my eyes don't track properly. We tried it, I think, twice on the podcast because they didn't have audio. And I went back to Bridget and I was like, we cannot do any more books that like don't have an audio version. I just can't read, and which was a hard admission. I was like, I can't read. So like, I just find that I love that when books are offered in audio, but also it makes it accessible to a different array of people in general. When they are. So that's awesome.
Do you work with a cover designer specifically or a bunch? Because the reason I chose Your Dad Will Do It First is because I love that cover with the thigh highs and like the red shoes. I was like, ooh, I am here for whatever is going to be happening in this book.
I have a cover designer that works with my villains in the Sabine Valley series, but actually I did Taboo myself.
Did you?
Yeah, one of my my 5-year-old randomly will just not sleep. And so when I'm exhausted and like can't really focus on writing, I just cruise stock photo sites. Like, I don't know. And so but I was like, oh, I'll just, throw together a cover and just see what happens. Cause I've never tried to do it myself before. And I can't do anything like particularly skilled. I just am really good at finding stock photos that look good and then, putting the text on there. But I did all the Taboo series, and then my like paranormal ones are all going to be ones that I did.
They're all stock photos. Well, those are beautiful stock photos then.
Yeah, you just gotta scroll and like do some like weird like divots and then you find one and you go down like a side alley and like and there they are.
And then you must have had someone though design all of the villains ones, because those
Yes.
ones have such a cool look to them.
Yes, those ones, definitely, because that I could never do that myself. And I'm really excited. I've seen the first book for Sabine Valley. The cover's live. The second one, I'm doing a cover reveal next week at time of recording with my newsletter. But I've seen the first 3 of 7 books, and they are all like in line with the villains as far as tonal, and like they tie in a little bit, but they're all like flowers, and there's 3 of everything or 3 of something on every cover because they're all menages, and it's so detailed and so like intense. And I never like she's brilliant, and I'm so happy, and I'm like, you're worth every penny, thank you.
I feel like you had Shawnee at Menages, an entire series of Menages. We literally are constantly like, it could be a throuple alert.
More should be, honestly. Like and that's kind of what I came down to with that series, is like I wanted at least a couple of them, but then I was like, let's just do them all. I'm sure I won't have any regrets about doing this like 5 books in. It'll be fine. So 4 will be male, male, female, and then 3 will be male, female, female. So there's going to be a little bit of everything. I'm excited.
I like it. Why have a love triangle when we can all just get along? You know what I'm saying?
More love for everybody. Like that's why my love triangles should always be thruples. Like I don't
always throuple. Always a throuple. Yeah. I think it's really interesting that in romance novels, I would say male, male, female is much more common than male, female, female. But obviously in like porn or anything where like a man is in charge, male, female, female is like the pretty typical thing. And I remember I had a menage situation myself, and all of my guy friends, when they like found out about it, were like, well, like, who's the other girl, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, why would there be a girl involved? And they were like, what do you mean? And I was like, obviously it was 2 dudes. Like, hello, have you met me? And they were just like, their minds were like, they're like, well, and I was just like, excuse me, if you're not doing that, then you're doing a disservice to your lady, okay? Because that's what she wants.
It's so weird.
Not that some women don't want another woman, because they totally do, but in my case, 2 dudes.
It's like it sucks, kind of like that's the assumption, you know, because when I would tell people that I had 2 partners, they're like, oh, you're bi, and I'm like, well, no. But that was always the assumption right off the bat, you know. Also because I have short hair, people just always assume that I am. It's the strangest thing. It's the strangest thing. People are always like, oh, I always thought you were, you know, like, but I'm happy that I guess all the books that are coming out, the menages, the thruples and things like that, they're kind of changing that skew and narrative, and more people are not assuming, you know, what's going on, and more open, which I think is just rad in general. Yeah,
it's definitely like probably 10 years ago. I don't know. Time has no meaning. At some point back when, like, before indie publishing was like real big, there were like menages, but they were through traditional publishers, so they were like really taboo and like erotica, and which is fine. They're great stories, but it's also, there's a lot more nuance in those stories now, like, or there's more nuance allowed, like that it's just more like, yeah, this is the romance, this is how it is. It isn't necessarily erotic. I mean, mine are, but like they exist, those stories exist in like a level of, or a scale of heat level and like all sorts of stuff, and it's awesome.
Yeah. Because I mean, Shawnee and I firmly believe on sex on the page just because we like it. We like to read it. We like to be there. We like to hear what everyone's saying and feeling and squishing and poking and prodded and whose fingers are where. And
she says that. But when we've read books that we didn't know what the sex was going to look like, and we get to like a fade to black closed door, we get livid.
I get so upset. I have to like verify with new authors that I haven't tried yet. I have to verify before I go in, because if I get 60% of the way through this book and then it's a closed door, I'm going to be real upset. It's just not for me. It's not my preferred reading level. If there's going to be sex, it better be on the page.
Yes. Or in your description, I want to know for sure that it is not. It better say the word sweet and like, you know, wholesome. I don't know. Better say something on the cover or on the back where I'm like, okay, this blurb has told me it's going to be closed door. Because we read one and we thought oh, it's going to be so great. Like the story was good. The writing was good. And all of a sudden we were like, we've been reading this book for quite some time to the next morning. And I was like, I'll throw this book across the floor right now. So bad. I think if Shawnee and I ever write books, which one, we have some short stories in mind, but if we ever write books, there's going to be sex. It's going to be on the page. One thing I think is the coolest about sex on the page is that like sex is a very vulnerable place in general. And especially for characters, you get to do a lot of like emotional work during a sex scene. How do you balance like the mechanics and the sort of steaminess of the sex with the emotions?
A lot of times the first round through, it's a lot of like mechanic, especially in menage ones. Like it's a lot of mechanics of like, because I actually have like Barbies that I pose out occasionally because I'm like, is this possible? Like I need to figure it out. But once that's through, then I'll go back through and like filter in elements of like emotions and like all the feels and vulnerability and like the other stuff that happens like beneath the surface level. But I don't have like a hard and fast rule when it comes to it because a lot of it's just like I've done this so long now that it's a lot of like organic feeling my way through and like, oh, this sex scene feels like really stilted. Well, it's because it's like a lot of he did this and then she did this and then they did this and so you have to like break that up so that it doesn't feel like you're reading like a scientific manual.
I know that I'm not engaged in a sex scene if I want to like skip it, and usually it's because it's like that. It's like a whole lot of like describing what's happening, and I kind of want the characters to tell me like if you're licking something, tell me I'm about to lick this thing on you. Like I want those words to come out of the mouth of the narrator.
And there's a delicate balance too between being like softening it, like the mechanics, but also you got to show the mechanics too, though. Like you need to know the things. So I don't know. I don't use overly flowery like euphemisms for anything.
Appreciate that.
Yes.
I also, one of my weird rules, and it's just for me, like it's just a personal preference thing, is I never explicitly describe like hair maintenance on genitalia or like the specific size of like a penis because everybody's got their preferences and like I don't want somebody to read it and be like whatever inch, like that's too much or too little or too whatever, like. And so I never those details never are in my books because I read one many moons ago that it was like I can't remember exactly what the length, but I was like, that sounds terrible, I don't want that, and it was so distracting. And so I just avoid those little details because the reader fills it in.
Yes, the reader fills it in. You can give like 3 little basic descriptions and we can build a whole world out of that. If you never say anything about a penis, we don't assume that they don't have one. Yeah. Like we just fill in our favorite size. That's just it.
When you can say like it's giant, but giant means different things to different people, so they can, figure it out for themselves.
Yeah. Also, like in real life, like people say like size matters, and it does, but ginormous isn't the size that matters. Every different person is different. Like I always say, like I have a very short torso and I have a very short canal. I don't need some ginormous situation. That sounds terrifying. Like
no. Yeah.
I'm just like, I can deal with a solid 6. A solid 6. We good. What'd you call it, Bridget?
Husband sized.
Husband sized.
That's awesome.
The one you want every day, all day, for the rest of your life. You don't have to like spend all your time working your way up to it every day. The husband
sometimes
size.
You just want to get it done.
You just want to get it in. You don't want to spend 20 minutes working it in there.
Have you ever had to scrap a book? Like, just been like, this is just not working, and then.
Not usually, because I have like a check system that like before I start a book, it's like my brand. It's like, is it bonkers? Is it sexy as F? Is it villains or anti-heroes? And are there like tropes for days? And as long as it checks most of those things, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this thing. I mean, I do have projects that I've started and not finished because that's the nature of the beast occasionally. But the worst I've had to do is I had to go back and let's see, my last traditional series, the first book I had to rewrite like 85% of it twice, just because I was trying to do something that didn't work with like one, the trope and characters, but also like with me, like I was trying to force it. And so it just wasn't working. And my editor was like, oh, so I hate it. Or like, she didn't hate it, but she was just like, it's not working.
Yeah.
And so I had to like rewrite a good portion of it twice, which I never ever want to do again. I haven't had to since, but that particular book was just a struggle from beginning to end. And then this series didn't end up doing particularly well, which I think partly was because I had to force it. But normally these days I have my goals is like I have to be joyful about whatever I'm writing. And even though there's a slog in every book, and some books are more like troublesome than others, but I haven't had to like rewrite huge portions or scrap anything because I have that joyful rule. I think that's why, hopefully.
Well, yeah, because you wake up every day and you're like, "Ooh, I'm excited to dip back in their story." You're not like, "Oh, I have to go and finish." I'm writing something right now, not a narrative. It's for like a product video, and I just really don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I could have finished it already if I just actually sat down and did it, but I just don't want to. I got to write it tonight because I'm on a deadline. Don't want to do it. Just want to read some books.
I kind of have the same rule for music, right? So like we'll make a bunch of beats and tracks and that sort of thing. And I'll listen to a track, and if my brain builds a world for that said track, then I'm like, then that's a good track. If I don't see anything, then I don't make that song. There's nothing for me there. That's kind of like the rule of thumb, because as soon as I see that world, I'm excited to write and make that thing come alive.
When they can, like the listeners or readers can tell when you're like super into it or not. And I can tell like in my reviews on because every series has like one book that I'm like less excited about than the rest. I'm hoping that won't happen now that I'm being more intentional, but we'll see. But I can tell in the reviews that readers are like, oh, I really enjoyed it, but like they aren't losing their shit over it because I was not losing my shit over it. And so, and it's still a good book and it's still a good product and I'm so proud of it, but that joyful element is like really important. And so I try to ensure that that's incorporated, and like I said, so far so good.
If you could live in one of your like book worlds, which one would you choose?
That's a good question. I would want to live in Carver City, like in the Wicked Villains, assuming that I'm not just like Joe Blow on the street. Like let me work for Hades. Let me do the thing. I'd be down with that. Yeah, I think that's my answer.
Carver City. Nice. I mean, we like a good fantasy. We like the elements of it being, not like a contemporary. Like I want that removal. We've talked about that a lot on the podcast. It allows for like a much easier avenue for me to get into a character or into a couple if I'm like, oh, well, they're clearly in some other place, not in 2020 in America. And so it's fine if he ties her up and makes her beg, because that's, you know what? Who am I to judge? This is another place. I can't.
Yeah, I've started saying like my books are basically paranormal books, but contemporary. Like they're a different world for all intents and purposes. And I've seen a lot of dialogue on like, will you put, not me specifically, but just in general, like authors, will you put like the pandemic into your books? I'm like, no, does not exist in my world. My world is like reality adjacent. And I think that, well, one, helps with my escape writing and also readers' escape reading, but allows, like you said, that element of like suspending disbelief. So it's like, yeah, sure, this is not like the real world. So it's cool that, he's banging her on the floor 30 seconds in, like seems legit. Which you're like, obviously I would not be down with that in real life, but in this world it works. So we're just going to
I wouldn't not be down with that. And I haven't not ever done that, but yes, also not a normal response.
But it has been difficult when we've been reading like contemporary stories that are written like very realistically to nowadays to allow some of the stuff that happens. Like the book will be so realistic that like, if the guy is kind of a douche, then he's kind of a dude. Like you you don't feel the charm in that.
He doesn't like your friends. Run away.
Run away. Yeah. So
or he's like a nice guy, TM. Like
exactly. And so it's hard to like suspend disbelief when that book is so close to reality. You know, that's why I mean I like the like mafia books and things like that kind of pull you away, even if they're set in the today time. They a lot of times they're millionaires, or billionaires. Always. So I'm already
it's organized crime, Shawnee.
Yeah, it's organized crime. So it already takes me out of the reality of my day-to-day life. This is not my homegirl. This is not my, I would never know these people. So I can also suspend disbelief in those types of books. But if it's like, the corner store and the, so-and-so and the mom and pop shop, I'm like, it's too close. Now I need things to run like they would run in reality.
Yeah, when these days I start having like anxiety, I'm like, no one's wearing masks. Like, what are you doing? And it's like, no, I need the full like divorce from reality to like, so I'm not thinking about the fact that everybody has COVID now or like whatever. Because otherwise I didn't realize, because I don't read a ton of contemporary when I'm writing it, because I just prefer not to. And I read one. It's been a couple months now, I think, but it was like, I got stressed out. I'm like, oh God, like he just walked right up to her and like he's so close and they're standing so close. And like, oh God, like that's not safe. And it was upsetting.
we read one where every kind of social justice issue was in the book. Like everything. And the one that we got mad about, well, there was a few, but one we got mad about was consent, right? So they had already banged, they'd already asked for consent and whatever. And then every time they had an interaction, they kept like verbally asking for consent. Yeah. And we were like, yo, man.
What did she say, Shawnee, about the blowjob? She was like, can I
put your dick in my mouth?
Your dick in my mouth or something? But it wasn't said like funnily or ironically, like
or sexily.
Like sexily, like with a wink, like, ooh, can I put your dick in my mouth? Like it was like literally like, and he was just like, yeah, sure, great. And I was like, you guys have already had sex. Like you're clearly 20 minutes into a makeout scene. Like, I don't think the blowjob's where he's drawn his boundary.
Well, and like there are ways to filter in consent, like even check-ins and stuff without.
Yeah, just like a quick yes, more.
Yes.
Or just like good, cool.
Good.
Or,
or we doing this?
Cool.
Yeah.
We doing this? Oh, yeah.
Oh, we doing this.
Oh, we doing this. If you could see one of your like worlds, I'm kind of assuming it's Carver City, but is there one story or from the world that you think would be a great movie or TV show?
I actually would really, really, really like to see, well, I mean, I don't know if it's cheating because it's not out yet, but like my Olympus, the Dark Olympus series that's starting next year is so glitzy and dark. It's like a John Wick type tonal. And
speaking my language.
Yeah. So it's just so like gritty, but also glitzy at the same time. And like, I would love to see that on a screen somewhere at some point. Putting out to the universe. Call me.
Hey, yes, you heard it here, guys. Call her. She's ready.
We are all about that. We want to see these things get made.
I feel like there's such a market for like the sexy, darky romance, like the 50 Shades, or nope, that's not what it is. Yes, but the 365 DNI.
365, yeah.
Like, I mean, say what you want about it, whatever. But like that, there is obviously an audience for it because that that movie was on the top 10 of Netflix for a hot minute.
Yeah.
Well, it got put on TikTok. I don't know. So a bunch of people started making these videos going, put on the movie 365 on Netflix and film yourself seeing the first scene or whatever. And so people started doing that, and then it shot up to whatever. And everybody was about it though. People weren't looking away.
No,
they were, you know what I mean? They were just looking for their next fix after that.
Yeah.
Because I think people don't even know that they want that fix until they've gotten it. And then, because if I looked at myself when I was 20, I don't necessarily know I would have categorized myself as kinky. I don't know necessarily that I would have been like, oh, you're so freaky, this and whatever. I lived in my book mind world, but in real life, it was all very vanilla, and it wasn't until I was like, I more just saw things modeled that I wanted to do, and realizing that, oh, I could have those things. I could do those things that I was like, well, let's do this shit. Like, what are we doing? What are we talking about? Let's stop talking. Let's, a little more action.
I feel like that, at least that's what I tell my kids, because my oldest is 14, almost 15, that I'm like, hey, like a great way to try stuff out is fictionally, like read about it and read stories where it's featured in and featured well, ideally, and just see how you feel about it. Because it might be like, nah, I don't want that. I read about it. I don't think so. Or it might be like, oh, and it's just such a great, like, safe way to like check stuff out. I mean, you kind of have to vet your sources, but like to check stuff out and be like, oh, like one of the highest compliments I get about the Wicked Villain series is people being like, I didn't know I was into this, but apparently I am. And I'm like, me too, man. so it's really cool to see people trying stuff out fictionally. And I don't know if it will ever stay fictional, but being like, oh, I didn't know that this was hot, but I've been convinced. Cool.
Now I will make a FetLife profile and see if other people are also into said things.
Well, even just like keeping it, there's a lot of things that you're never going to try in real life, but it's so fun to be able to like just read about them and read a great story and like put yourself in the mindset and be like, ooh, that was scandalous. Do I really want someone to do that to me? Probably not. But I can now safely enjoy this, have my orgasms at home in the comfort of my home, and go on about my day.
Well, that's why I know that in romance, sometimes we get really intense about like setting a good example or like whatever. But that's why, especially dark romance, I feel like has a place because it's a safe place to explore stuff that you wouldn't necessarily want in real life. Like I read Nikki Sloane's Sorted, which is just straight up like dubious consent at best. And I was like, obviously this is wrong, but also this is like hitting a id spot that I was not aware I had that is really like cathartic to read fictionally in a way that like, obviously if this happened in real life, it would be a completely different reaction. But I think that sometimes people can get really like defensive, like, oh, like my guilty pleasure. And I'm like, it's not a guilty pleasure.
Not
just
guilty.
Enjoy things. Like
just pleasure. Pleasure.
Like if this book would not be written and would not, still be around if other people were not enjoying reading it as well and having these fictional experiences as well. Like, it's you're not the only one.
For sure.
We also find we go through Goodreads when we read a book to see what other people do. We also pick our favorite review that might be similar to what we're thinking about a book. And we find people on there who will like rate a book 1 star, and they'll rate that book 1 star for what the book is fundamentally, right? Yeah. So it's a dark romance. It's going to be murky consent. There's certain things there's a rainbow of things might happen in dark romance. And they go on there and they list all those things and they're like, that's why this book is a 1 star. And we're like, no, that's what makes this book amazing.
Yeah. But also that was in the description and the content warning. So why'd you even read it? That's what I don't get. I'm like, stop reading. Or they'll be like 1 star, I don't like this author. And I'm like, stop reading their book. This is my 4th book by this author and I still don't like them. And I'm like, move on.
Well, that's why I don't understand why authors get upset about 1 star reviews. Because I'm like, those reviews sell as many copies as your 5-star reviews because somebody's reading that being like, oh, this is exactly what I want. And I mean, it sucks to have somebody be like, this book was shit, I hated it, whatever. But it also serves a very important purpose too. And I just, for everybody who's like yucking on some yum, that's somebody's yum and they are going to grab that book real fast.
Yeah.
Yes, I will always grab a book that someone's like, it was too steamy. They had too much sex. I'm like, tell me more. What kind?
I've read so many books that are like, this book has gratuitous sex scenes. And I was like, oh, okay.
It sounds like exactly what I want.
Sounds like exactly what I want.
Auto buy.
And then like what you were describing earlier when you were talking about like the books that are just the gratification. Like I have a list of books on Audible that I just call my quickies. It means like I have already read this book. I know that it delivers on exactly what I need to deliver, and I only have an hour or less to get there. So I have my bookmarks already booked out, and like, look, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, what do we got? Let's go. So there's definitely a huge place, I think, for those books. I don't have 9 hours to get into a world.
Oh my gosh. I don't think we've asked another author this, but what is it like knowing people are having delicious orgasms to your writing? Or maybe reenacting some sex scenes. Who knows? Maybe they're doing a whole scene about it.
I don't spend a ton of time thinking about it but I do occasionally. Well, I don't read my reviews much anymore, but like I used to when I was newer. And like every time I'd see somebody be like, my partner thanks you for this book. Like I was like, you know what? Well done, you. Like good job. I don't think about it over much just because I guess it's a little bit like we talked about earlier, like once the book's out of my hands, it no longer is mine. And so I don't really think about anyone else's reaction or anything when I'm actually writing, because if I did, I'd like be paralyzed.
Yeah.
And so I just sort of like tell the story as authentically as I can and as hot as I feel. Like if I feel it's hot, usually it resonates on that level with somebody somewhere. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool, but it's also not something I think about too much.
Yeah, I suppose you've already, by the time it's out there in the world, you've already moved on to your next story that you're thinking of. And
I don't know. I feel like I'd be sitting there being like, oh, this is hot. This is so hot. This is going to get him. This is going to get him. You type it furiously. Like, oh yeah, bam. Look at that. They ain't going to be ready for this. Boom.
Well, I do share like sexy teasers in like on my public Patreon page and in my Facebook group. Like I cross post them just like when I'm like, holy shiitake mushrooms. And I'll like take like an excerpt and share it just because the reactions of people being like, God damn it, I'm at work, like make me like ridiculously happy. So there is an element of like, I guess I am somewhat aware just because I do that, but it's yeah. So every once in a while, I'm like, this is really hot. Here you guys go. Do you like it?
There you go. You're welcome.
And that's awesome.
So you, I assume, write at your house because of COVID,
Yes.
but were you always write at home, or were you a coffee shop kind of writer? What was your pre-COVID life like?
There used to be, I used to like when my youngest was really little, I would drop him with my mother-in-law and go right outside the house just to get away from him because I love him so much, but you know, babies. I
talk about on the podcast literally every week about getting away from my children. You are in good company.
First of all, I edit the podcast, right? So sometimes Bridget sends these things to be edited, but right in the middle of it, she'll be like, Kira, get out of here. What are you doing? God damn it, Kira. Okay, sit there. Now be quiet. Mommy's got to finish recording this.
You have to get out.
So all of this will be in the recording when I'm editing.
I'll be like, say hi to Shani. Hi, Shani, Nani.
But yeah, so but in the last couple of years, I've really I have my not couple. Oh, man, words are super great. I'm doing great. Yeah. Since we moved into our house now, almost 6 years ago now, I have an actual office. It's like my space.
Nice.
And I've slowly been outfitting it and stuff. I have a walking treadmill now. And so
Ooh, that's cool. I want one of those.
Oh, it's amazing how I underestimated that it not only makes me write slightly faster, but I think it's because it just I click in and it's deep work immediately because I'm just moving and not dicking around on Twitter. Mm-hmm. So I definitely write at home now. And when someday when the kids go back to school, I will still be writing at home. Cause it allows me to I like to move a lot, and it's hard to do that at a coffee shop. Cause you can't get up and meander around or whatever. I mean, I guess you could, but I always feel weird about it. So I like my little nest in my house.
I find that for me, cause I've been working at home now for even before I had kids for the last, 5 or 6 years, with the exception of a couple of days a year, on sets or whatnot. And I find the hardest thing for me with COVID is I didn't leave my house very much anyways. Mm-hmm. But the idea that I can't is really the struggle, because it's not like my day-to-day life has changed all that much compared to most people. Because I had babies at home. I was at home with the babies and working already. Mm-hmm. But it's I can't just put them in a front pack and go to the grocery store if I'm blocked on something I'm working on, or I can't just oh, well, you know what? Today I really want to go get lunch and sit at a place and have someone bring me refillable sodas for the next 2 hours while I type on my computer. It's those are the struggles for me, at least.
Yeah. My hardest thing has been that I'm never alone now. I used to have some reprieve at some point because my youngest had just started he did preschool last year. And so he's supposed to be in preschool this year. Supposed to be 5 days a week, 5 mornings a week. And I was supposed to have 2 myself.
Sweet,
I was so excited to be alone, fully alone in my house. And then, COVID happened. So that is obviously not a thing. But So that's been the hardest part, is that I'm like never alone, and like I'm an introvert, so I need that recharge time. So I've had to get really creative on like acquiring it, because it makes me a little like loose around the edges after a while.
Yeah, I started totally telling my little kid that I'm having Bridget time right now. She says, "Is that the same as mommy time?" I say, "No, mommy time is a time with you. Mommy time is a time with, Leo. Mommy's the time, Bridget time is Bridget time. Bridget time is not time with you. You don't get to be in Bridget. Bridget time is time by Bridget's self. Bridget by herself." You get to, and she's like, she'll come in and I'll be taking a hot bath and she'll be like, "Are you having Bridget time or mommy time?" And I'll say Bridget time. And she's like, "Oh, okay." And she'll like sneak back out. And I'm like, "Go find your dad and get out of here."
I invested in, because I don't have a door in my office, which was, hindsight was not a great idea. But I invested in noise canceling headphones. So every once in a while when I get like frazzled, I'll put on like classical music or like some sort of like, there's like calm playlist on Spotify that I searched out and found, and I just put that on and like read, even though I'm in the room with like my entire freaking family. It like helps unwind a little bit, because oh geez, I love them so much, but sometimes I'd like to be apart from them.
Noise canceling headphones were the best thing I ever bought in the last year. Like hands down, I didn't know I could have that kind of peace. Like in, so a lot of times I wear them everywhere, the grocery store, like anywhere I feel like nobody's going to attack me from the back. I like to wear them, because like it just brings everything down, even if they're not on, it just dulls everything to a level that doesn't make me insane. If you're sound sensitive, anybody out there, if you're sound sensitive, get yourself some noise canceling headphones.
Yeah, it saved my freaking life. Saved my family's life too. I only threaten to feed them to wolves like once a week now. It's
I am very impressed with. I tell my dad I'm going to throw her in the garbage can. I'm going to throw you in the garbage can. You better watch out, because she's a little still. God, parenting is the best.
I brought you into this world. I'll take you out.
This is why we do so much creative work, because we have to escape the parenting into the creativity to stay alive.
And that's like the only time that I'm in a room by myself. Most of the time is when I'm in my office. So I just end up retreating there, which is then I'm like, well, I'm here, I might as well work. And that's how I'm writing like a gajillion books, is because I'm escaping my family.
The perfect reason to be writing all of us a bunch of deliciously smutty books so that we can read them and be happy.
You're doing the Lord's work.
Doing the Lord's work, providing happiness in quarantine.
I try.
So Katee is here providing us smutty goodness and some escapism in quarantine. You guys, we are reading The Beast. It's coming out the end of this week. We are very, very excited about it. Katee, tell the people a little teaser about what they can expect on Friday.
So The Beast is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, except instead of just Beauty and the Beast, there's also Gaten, which is like the hunter type. And she dated simultaneously with consent both men previously, and the relationships blew up in all their faces. And so now she needs them to like come back to like their territory to like help defend it, but they aren't super interested in that because they have a lot of baggage with her. And so they sort of agree to this temporary sex pact to kind of like work through their issues and stuff to see if it'll work out. And they're all terrible at communication except when they're naked. So it's like nonstop like sex while they communicate, because every time they put their clothes on, they just are a mess. And so it's them fucking their way through their issues, which was a delightful. And she's kind of got a shame kink. There's some elements like with another lady at one point. Like it's just real sexy.
Yay, you guys, it's a Christmas miracle. Christmas present for us all.
It is a second chance at love.
It's a second chance. It is. Oh my God, we still hit it. Oh, I'm so happy now. Because, okay, Katee, we were talking about how the reason I stumbled upon, because I was looking for sexy Christmas, and Christmas, we kept finding all these books that were like second chance, like, small town romance, single divorced mother goes back and finds love again. Like all these and they were very feelsy. Most of them were more Hallmarky versus steamy. And I was like, someone has to be writing erotic Christmas. It has to be out there. And that is how we stumbled But now we're hitting both. We got the second chance romance and the steam.
I'm here for it.
I did it, you guys. Katie did it. I did it. It's all
Christmas miracle.
It's all happening. It's a
Meant to
Christmas
be.
miracle. It's all meant to be. One question we've been asking a lot of our authors at the end, especially ones who've been in like longer relationships, is you write all these happily ever afters, you write about your characters. What's the one thing in your personal relationship that you would say is kind of like the cornerstone of a successful partnership?
I think ours is, well, I mean, communication obviously like is the biggest thing, but also it was really helpful. It always sounds so cheesy to say this, but like the love languages of realizing that, well, ours, we're lucky because ours match up. But so when I am like trying to make him feel loved, I'll be like, oh, I'll just, acts of service. I'll do some dishes or some shit. And so like having those tools is super helpful to be intentional about, because a lot of times, especially with like small children or a pandemic or, like various life stuff, like you kind of become ships passing in the night or just like people coexisting together. And so it's really helpful to have those tools to be like, oh, I want you to feel loved right now. So I know that doing this will help you feel loved. And instead of, just it helps that. It helps the communication.
Yeah. And also I like that you said about the intentional, like you're intentionally telling them in the way that they receive it, that you love them and that you're prioritizing them. Yeah. That's great advice. Well, you guys, she gives great advice. She writes great books. She's the package. She's the whole package. She's the whole package. Guys, if this wasn't a pandemic, I'd be like, Katie, come on out. Let's hang out. Oh my God, Katie, this has been so fun. Thank you so much for taking some time away from your glorious brood and talking to us.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening.
Subscribe to our channel to get new episodes, clips, and more.
And click here to watch our previous reviews and author interviews.